The weathered cowboy yanked the giant black woman from the steel bear trap's crushing jaws just as bone would have snapped. Next morning, she towered over his bedroll, demanding he marry her and make her a mother. Millfield's townspeople had always seen him as nothing, a broken drifter destined to disappear into the desert like morning mist. They whispered he'd die forgotten and alone. But this towering woman saw something else entirely in his gentle hands and haunted eyes during her rescue. She possessed vast, fertile land and needed a partner worthy of her trust, someone who'd proven his character when it mattered most. Yet neither knew that powerful men had set that trap specifically for her, and their fury at losing their prize would demand blood. Can two outcasts forge a future together? Or will hidden enemies destroy them both before love takes root? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The dust clouds settled behind Jeb Crowder's horse as he rode into Millfield. His torn shirt and patched boots drew stares from the townspeople lining the wooden sidewalks. Women pulled their children closer. Men spat into the dirt. At the saloon, Sheriff Hawkins leaned against the bar. His deputy Buck stood beside him, both watching Jeb through the window. Their conversation carried through the thin walls. "Another drifter," Buck said. "Looks like he ain't got 2 coins to rub together." "Won't last a week out here," Hawkins replied. "The weak ones never do." Jeb tied his horse to the post outside the general store. The owner's wife crossed herself when he approached the counter. He asked for supplies with quiet politeness. She bagged his goods without meeting his eyes. 2 cowboys stumbled out of the saloon, drunk and looking for trouble. They blocked Jeb's path back to his horse. "You hear that, Billy? This one thinks he belongs here," the taller one slurred. Billy pushed Jeb's shoulder. "Maybe we should teach him some manners." Jeb stepped back. The crowd gathered, expecting a fight. Instead, he walked around them without a word. The cowboys laughed and called him a coward. The townspeople nodded in agreement. Outside the doctor's office, Jeb noticed an injured horse favoring its front leg. The animal's owner, an elderly rancher, looked frustrated. "That leg's infected," Jeb said softly. The rancher scowled. "What would you know about it?" Jeb examined the wound with practiced hands. He cleaned it with surprising skill, then wrapped it properly. The horse's breathing eased immediately. "Where'd you learn that?" the rancher asked. His tone changed. Jeb mounted his horse without answering. He rode toward the edge of town as the sun began to set. Dr. Margaret Wells watched from her office window. She had seen that kind of medical knowledge before. It spoke of training and experience that didn't match his appearance. At the sheriff's office, papers covered Hawkins' desk. Missing person reports, all describing successful black landowners who had vanished without explanation. "Natural departures," Hawkins told Buck. "They know when they're not welcome." Buck held up a strange metal contraption. "Found another one of those modified traps near the creek. The steel jaws had been altered, enlarged, sharpened. These weren't meant for animals." "Keep setting them," Hawkins said. "Someone will walk into one eventually." Jeb made camp in a canyon outside town. His hands shook as he built the fire. Memories haunted him. A woman's laugh, a child's cry, both silenced by disease while he was away driving cattle. The screaming started just after midnight. Jeb grabbed his medical kit from his saddlebags. Old instincts kicked in as he followed the sound through the rocky terrain. The cries led him deeper into the canyon. Moonlight revealed the source. A massive woman trapped in steel jaws that had clamped around her leg. Blood pooled beneath the contraption. She was nearly 7 feet tall, her dark skin glistening with sweat and pain. "Stay back," she warned through gritted teeth. "This could be a trap." Jeb knelt beside the device anyway. His experienced hands found the release mechanism. The woman studied his face as he worked. "You know what you're doing," she observed. The trap opened with a metallic snap. Blood flowed freely from the deep puncture wounds. Jeb immediately applied pressure to stop the bleeding. "I'm Amara," she said as he cleaned her injuries. "Jeb." He worked with the precision of someone who had done this many times before. His movements were gentle despite the urgency. Amara watched him carefully, noting every detail of his technique. "You're not just a drifter," she said. Jeb bound her wounds with strips torn from his own shirt. "Can you walk?" "Not far." He helped her to her feet. She towered over him, but leaned heavily on his shoulder. They made their way slowly to a natural spring hidden among the rocks. Jeb cleaned her wounds again with the fresh water. The injuries were serious but not life-threatening. His medical supplies were limited but sufficient. "Someone set that trap specifically," Amara said. "It was placed on the path to my land." "Your land?" "I own the valley beyond those hills. Rich soil, natural spring, worth killing for." Jeb finished bandaging her leg. "Who would want it? Men who think people like me shouldn't own anything valuable." In the distance, hoofbeats approached, multiple riders moving fast through the canyon. Amara tensed. "They're looking for me," she whispered. Jeb helped her into the shadows behind the rocks. 3 men on horseback appeared at the spring. Buck and 2 others Jeb didn't recognize. They carried ropes and chains. "She has to be here somewhere," Buck said. "The trap was sprung." "Check every hiding spot," another rider ordered. "Blackwood wants her found tonight." They searched for an hour before giving up. After their hoofbeats faded, Amara emerged from hiding. "Now you know," she said. "Helping me makes you their enemy too." Jeb looked at his blood-stained hands. For the first time in years, he had used his medical skills to save someone instead of watching them die. The familiar weight of purpose settled on his shoulders. "Then we better get you somewhere safe," he said. As dawn broke over the canyon, neither of them knew that Amara had been studying him throughout the rescue. His gentleness, his competence, his willingness to risk danger for a stranger. She had been searching for someone exactly like him. Tomorrow, she would make him an offer that would change both their lives forever. Dawn light filtered through Jeb's makeshift camp when Amara arrived. She moved with surprising grace despite her bandaged leg. Her towering figure cast a long shadow over his bedroll. "I have a proposition," she said without preamble. Jeb looked up from his dying campfire. "You should be resting that leg." "Marry me." The words hit him like a physical blow. He scrambled to his feet, coffee cup forgotten in the dirt. "Make me a mother," Amara continued. "Help me work my land, defend what's mine." Jeb stared at her. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." She gestured toward his medical supplies. "You have training, education, skills you're hiding from everyone in that town." "That doesn't mean anything." Amara pulled a worn leather journal from her coat. "This belonged to my late husband. He wrote about soil composition, crop rotation, defensive strategies." "Smart man." She opened the journal to a detailed map. The valley she claimed stretched for miles. Natural springs dotted the landscape. Rich bottomland, perfect for farming. "He left me 2,000 acres, she said. "Best farmland in the territory." Jeb's eyes widened. Land like that was worth a fortune. "I need a partner," Amara continued. "Someone I can trust. Someone who won't run when things get difficult." "Why me?" "Because you saved me without expecting anything in return. Because you have gentle hands and medical knowledge. Because you're running from something that taught you about loss." Jeb touched his ring finger unconsciously, the pale band of skin where his wedding ring used to rest. "I had a family once," he said quietly. "Lost them to cholera while I was away on a cattle drive." "I know grief," Amara replied. "My husband was murdered by men who wanted our land. Shot him in the back like a coward." They stood in silence as the morning sun climbed higher. "This isn't about love," Amara clarified. "This is business, partnership, mutual benefit. What makes you think I can help defend anything? The whole town thinks I'm a coward." Amara smiled for the first time since he'd met her. Cowards don't ride toward screaming in the middle of the night. In town, Sheriff Hawkins paced his office like a caged animal. Buck sat slumped in a chair, nursing a bruised ego. "She was right there," Buck complained. "Someone helped her escape." "The trap was perfectly placed," Hawkins said. "She should have been unconscious from blood loss." Theodore Blackwood entered without knocking. His expensive suit looked out of place in the rough frontier office. His cold eyes demanded answers. "Where is she?" Blackwood asked. "Still looking," Hawkins replied. "Someone interfered. Find out who. Make them regret it." Blackwood spread a territorial map across the desk. Red X marks covered nearly half the available land claims. "We've acquired 18 properties this year," he said, "but the long claim is the prize. That valley has water rights worth more than all the others combined." "She won't sell," Buck said. "She doesn't have to sell if she's dead," Blackwood replied. At her hidden valley, Amara showed Jeb the true scope of her inheritance. Rolling meadows stretched between protective hills. A clear stream wound through the center, feeding natural irrigation channels her husband had carved. The main house was modest but well built. Defensive positions had been carefully planned. High ground commanded views of all approaches. Underground root cellars could store supplies for months. "He thought like a military man," Jeb observed. "Fought in the war. Came west to build something peaceful." Jeb examined the irrigation system. The engineering was sophisticated. Whoever designed this understood both farming and hydraulics. "You could feed 100 families with this land," he said. "That's the idea. But first I need to secure it. Need children to inherit it. Need a partner strong enough to help defend it." She opened another section of her husband's journal. Detailed drawings showed hidden weapon caches, escape routes, and defensive fortifications. "He prepared for war," Amara explained. "Hoped for peace, but expected trouble. Smart man. Will you help me continue his work?" Jeb walked to the edge of the property. The view stretched for miles in every direction. Rich soil, clean water, natural defenses. It was everything a man could want. "I don't know anything about farming," he admitted. "You know about healing, about taking care of things. The rest we can learn together." "What about the men hunting you?" "They'll come eventually, but together we're stronger than apart." Jeb thought about his empty years since losing his family, drifting from town to town, running from memories that followed him everywhere. "This is crazy," he said. "Crazy might be exactly what we need." That evening, Dr. Wells examined Amara's leg wounds in her office. The trap had left deep puncture marks, but they were healing cleanly. "Whoever treated these knew what they were doing," Wells observed. "A friend," Amara replied. "The same friend who happened to be riding through that canyon at midnight." Amara met her gaze steadily. Wells had been the only person in town to treat her with basic respect. "Someone set that trap specifically for you," Wells continued. "The modifications were designed to catch and hold a person your size." "I figured as much." Wells pulled out a stack of medical records. 3 other landowners have died under suspicious circumstances this year. All ruled accidental. But you don't think so. "I think someone in this town is systematically removing successful black property owners." Amara absorbed this information without surprise. "Any idea who?" "Theories, but no proof yet." The next morning, Jeb found Amara waiting by his campfire again. She carried a small bag and wore her most determined expression. "Well?" she asked. Jeb looked toward town, then back at the hidden valley beyond the hills. For 3 years he had been running from his past. Maybe it was time to start building a future. "All right," he said, "but we do this properly. Legal marriage, equal partnership." Amara extended her hand. "Deal." They shook on it as the sun rose over the territory that would either become their home or their grave. Jeb moved his few belongings to Amara's valley the next morning. The hidden property revealed new wonders with each passing hour. Apple orchards planted in perfect rows, vegetable gardens laid out with mathematical precision, storage barns built to withstand harsh winters. "Your husband planned everything," Jeb observed. Amara opened another section of the leather journal. He documented 5 years of crop yields, soil samples, weather patterns. "This land produces 3 times what normal farms manage." They worked side by side, repairing fence posts damaged by recent storms. Amara's strength matched her size. She lifted timbers that would challenge 2 ordinary men. Jeb's medical precision served him well with carpentry. His measurements were exact. His joints held firm. "You've done this before," Amara noted. "Built a house once. Back when I had reason to. Tell me about them." Jeb hammered a nail with unnecessary force. "Sarah was a school teacher. Emma was 7. Both gone in 3 days while I was pushing cattle to Kansas. The cholera outbreak of '76? You know about it? Lost friends in that epidemic. Whole families wiped out. They continued working in comfortable silence. Shared grief created understanding without need for words. In town, Sheriff Hawkins spread poison with calculated efficiency. He visited the barbershop first. Gossip flowed fastest there. Unnatural union, he told the barber. That drifter and the giant woman. "What do you mean?" the barber asked. "Living together out there? Mixing races? Goes against God's plan?" The barber's customers nodded in agreement. By noon, half the town buzzed with speculation about Jeb and Amara's relationship. Blackwood made his own rounds. He visited respectable businessmen with subtle threats disguised as friendly warnings. "Property values could suffer," he told the bank president. "Decent folks might move elsewhere if this continues." "What do you suggest?" the banker asked. "Economic pressure. Make them understand they're not welcome." Dr. Wells watched the campaign of whispers from her office window. She had seen this pattern before in other towns. First came the rumors, then came the violence. Jeb and Amara rode to town for supplies that afternoon. The change in atmosphere hit them immediately. Conversations stopped when they appeared. Store owners quoted inflated prices. Children stared openly. At the general store, the owner's wife refused to serve Amara directly. She dealt only with Jeb, as if Amara were invisible. "Flour's gone up," the woman announced. "Supply problems." The price had doubled since yesterday. Jeb paid without complaint, but noted the full shelves behind the counter. Outside, 2 cowboys blocked their path to the horses, different men from before, but carrying the same hostile energy. "Heard you got yourself a pet," one said to Jeb. "Keep walking," Jeb replied quietly. "Maybe we should teach her some manners." Amara stepped forward. Her full height towered over both cowboys. They suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere. "Cowards always travel in packs," she observed. That evening, Dr. Wells visited their valley under cover of darkness. She brought disturbing news along with medical supplies. "The modified bear traps aren't random," she reported. "Someone's been mapping property lines, studying movement patterns." "How do you know?" Amara asked. Wells pulled out sketches copied from medical records. 3 other landowners died from accidents this year. All had valuable water rights. All were successful black farmers. "Someone's systematically removing competition," Jeb concluded. "And now they're targeting you." Amara studied the sketches carefully. The trap locations formed a pattern around the most valuable properties in the territory. "We need proof," she said. "Evidence that ties specific people to these deaths." "I'm working on it, but be careful. They're getting bolder." The next morning brought the first direct threat. A note nailed to their front door demanded Amara sell her land for a fraction of its value. The signature was illegible, but the message was clear. "Subtle," Amara commented, crumpling the paper. "What do we do?" Jeb asked. "What my husband would have done. Prepare for siege." They spent the day implementing defensive strategies from the journal. Hidden weapon caches were checked and restocked. Escape routes were cleared and marked. Food supplies were moved to the underground storage areas. Jeb discovered he had a talent for tactical thinking. His medical training had taught him to stay calm under pressure. Those same skills applied to defensive planning. "You're good at this," Amara observed. "Keeping people alive was my job once." "Still is." That evening, they sat by the fire sharing stories of their former lives. Amara revealed her education at a private school back east. Her husband had insisted she learn reading, writing, and mathematics despite social conventions. "He said knowledge was the only thing they couldn't steal," she explained. "Smart man keeps proving himself right." "What about you? Medical school?" Jeb nodded. 2 years before the war interrupted everything. Finished my training in field hospitals." "Why did you stop practicing?" Hard to heal people when you couldn't save the ones who mattered most. Amara reached across the space between them. Her large hand covered his completely. Maybe it's time to start again. 3 days later, Blackwood made his personal appearance. He rode up to their house with 2 armed men as escorts. His expensive clothes and confident manner marked him as the power behind recent events. "Miss Long," he said politely, "I represent certain business interests in the area." "I'm not selling," Amara replied before he could continue. "Perhaps we could discuss terms that might change your mind." "No terms. No discussion. Get off my land." Blackwood's facade slipped slightly. "You're making this more difficult than necessary. And you're trespassing." Jeb stepped up beside Amara. His medical bag hung from his shoulder, but his hand rested near the pistol at his hip. "The lady asked you to leave," Jeb said quietly. Blackwood studied them both carefully. "Interesting partnership you formed here. Is there a problem?" Dr. Wells called out from the road. She approached on horseback, her medical bag prominently displayed. As the town doctor, her presence commanded respect even from men like Blackwood. "Just a friendly business call," Blackwood replied smoothly. "Business hours are during the day in town," Wells observed. "This looks more like harassment." Blackwood signaled his men to mount up. "We'll continue this conversation later." After they rode away, Wells dismounted and joined Jeb and Amara on the porch. "That was Blackwood himself," she said. "He doesn't usually make personal visits." "Meaning?" Amara asked. "Meaning they're running out of patience. Time to make your partnership official before they try something more direct." Jeb and Amara looked at each other across the firelight. Their business arrangement had grown into something deeper during the days of working together. Respect had become trust. Trust was becoming something stronger. "Tomorrow," Amara said. "We get married tomorrow." Dr. Wells performed the wedding ceremony in her office the next morning. Only 3 witnesses attended: the general store owner who supported fair treatment, an elderly rancher whose horse Jeb had healed, a freed slave woman who worked as a seamstress. The ceremony lasted 10 minutes. Amara wore her best dress. Jeb had cleaned his boots and borrowed a proper shirt. Their vows were simple but sincere. "I promise to stand with you," Jeb said. "I promise to trust you," Amara replied. Wells signed the marriage certificate with official authority. The document would protect their property rights under territorial law. "Now you're legally partners in everything," Wells explained. "Land, assets, debts." That afternoon, strange incidents began immediately. Their well water turned bitter overnight. Someone had dumped salt into the natural spring. Fence posts were cut down in the darkness. Tool handles were sawed nearly through. "Systematic harassment," Amara observed, examining the sabotage. "They're trying to drive us away without direct confrontation," Jeb added. More concerning were the dead animals. 3 chickens poisoned, a cow found shot through the head. The killings served no purpose except intimidation. Dr. Wells arrived that evening with disturbing news. She carried a stack of official documents stolen from the sheriff's office. "I found these in Hawkins' desk," she announced. The papers revealed a coordinated conspiracy. Death certificates signed without proper examinations. Property transfers approved within days of suspicious accidents. Bank loans mysteriously called in just before convenient deaths. "Look at this pattern." Wells spread the documents across their kitchen table. 18 black landowners had died under questionable circumstances over 2 years. All possessed valuable water rights or fertile soil. Their properties had been acquired by the same holding company. "Blackwood Industries," Jeb read from the transfer papers. "Shell Company," Amara noted, "hides the real owners." Wells pulled out medical records she had copied secretly. Every death certificate was signed by the same coroner, Dr. Harrison from the county seat. "Bought and paid for," Amara concluded. The most damaging evidence came from correspondence between Hawkins and Blackwood. Letters discussed removal operations and asset acquisition through natural causes. "They've been planning this for years," Wells said. "Systematic elimination of successful black farmers." Jeb studied the timeline carefully. "The pattern is accelerating. 3 deaths in the last month alone, which means we're next on their list. That night, armed riders circled their property. They stayed beyond rifle range but made their presence obvious. Torches flickered in the darkness like malevolent stars. Psychological warfare, Amara observed from their bedroom window. It's working, Jeb admitted. I keep thinking about Sarah and Emma. This is different. We know what's coming. Does that make it easier? Makes it survivable. The next morning brought direct action. Hawkins arrived with official papers and 4 deputies. All the men wore badges but moved like hired gunmen. Jeb Crowder, Hawkins announced loudly. You're under arrest for cattle rustling. What cattle? Jeb asked. Thompson's herd. 5 head missing yesterday. Witnesses saw you in the area. The charges were obviously fabricated, but the arrest was completely legal under territorial law. Hawkins had covered every procedural requirement. This is harassment, Amara protested. This is justice, Hawkins replied. Your husband is a known thief. They shackled Jeb despite his cooperation. Amara watched helplessly as they loaded him into the wagon. The plan was transparent but effective. Don't do anything foolish while he's gone, Hawkins warned her. Accidents happen to people who don't have protection. After they left, Amara found herself alone on 2,000 acres with enemies circling. But her husband's journal contained contingency plans for exactly this situation. Dr. I. Wells arrived within an hour of the arrest. She brought medical supplies and grim determination. They're moving faster than expected, Wells reported. The trial is scheduled for tomorrow. Rigged jury? Completely. Blackwood owns half the men and intimidated the rest. Amara opened the journal to a section marked Emergency Protocols. Her husband had anticipated every possible attack. He planned for this exact scenario, she told Wells. Husband arrested on false charges. Wife left vulnerable for final assault. The defensive preparations were elaborate. Hidden weapons positioned at strategic points, signal systems to summon help, escape routes mapped through the surrounding hills. What kind of help? Wells asked. Amara showed her a list of names and locations. Other black families throughout the territory. Sympathetic whites who opposed the conspiracy. Even Apache contacts who traded fairly with honest settlers. He built a network, Amara realized. People who would stand together against systematic oppression. That afternoon, riders began arriving at the hidden valley. Word had spread through secret channels about Jeb's arrest and the threat to Amara's land. Marcus Johnson came from the South Valley. His family had lost 2 sons to suspicious accidents. Sarah Creek brought her 3 grown daughters and their husbands. Samuel Washington arrived with hunting rifles and grim experience. They tried this with my brother last year, Washington reported. Burned his house while he was in jail on false charges. What happened? Wells asked. We were ready for them. By evening, 20 armed defenders had gathered at Amara's property. They positioned themselves according to the tactical plans in her husband's journal. Every approach was covered. Every escape route was secured. They'll come tonight, Amara predicted, while Jeb's safely locked away and can't interfere. Marcus Johnson checked his rifle carefully. Let them come. In town, Blackwood reviewed the final phase of his plan with Hawkins and Buck. Maps showed approach routes to Amara's valley. Men were assigned specific targets and responsibilities. Make it look like an accident, Blackwood ordered. House fire. Tragic loss. What about the body? Buck asked. Won't be enough left to question the cause. Hawkins distributed weapons to 12 hired men. None were local residents. All had been brought in specifically for this operation. No witnesses, he reminded them. No survivors. In his jail cell, Jeb paced like a caged animal. The walls were solid stone. The door was reinforced steel. Even his medical knowledge couldn't help him escape. But through the small window, he could see smoke rising from the direction of his wife's valley. Either Amara was burning brush for farm work, or their enemies had begun the final assault. He prayed it was brush. Miles away, Amara crouched behind defensive positions her husband had designed years earlier. Armed neighbors flanked her on both sides. Dr. Wells had positioned herself as field medic with full supplies. Torches appeared on the horizon as riders approached through the darkness. The sound of hoofbeats echoed off the surrounding hills like approaching thunder. The conspiracy had revealed itself completely. Now only violence would determine who controlled the most valuable land in the territory. Amara watched the torches approach through her rifle scope. 12 riders moved in formation toward her valley. Their military precision confirmed these were not local troublemakers, but professional gunmen. "Wait for my signal," she whispered to the defenders positioned around her property. Her husband's journal had predicted this exact scenario. Professional assault following the husband's convenient arrest. The defensive positions had been designed specifically for this threat. Marcus Johnson crouched behind the water trough near the barn. "They're splitting up," he reported quietly. 4 riders continued toward the main house. The others circled toward the back canyon to cut off escape routes. Textbook tactics for a coordinated raid. Dr. Wells remained hidden in the root cellar with her medical supplies. Her job was to document everything and treat the wounded afterward. Win or lose, someone needed to survive with evidence. The lead riders reached the house just after midnight. They carried torches and ropes soaked in kerosene. Their plan was simple: burn everything. Claim the woman died in an accidental fire. "Amara Long," Buck called out from his saddle. "Come out peaceable. Nobody has to get hurt." Amara appeared in her doorway holding a lantern. She looked small and vulnerable against the massive log house, exactly what they expected to see. "My husband's in jail," she said loudly. "I'm alone here." "That's right. And accidents happen to folks without protection." Buck dismounted and approached the porch. His overconfidence made him careless. He never saw the tripwire stretched across the path. The wire triggered a carefully balanced log that swung down from the porch roof. It caught Buck square in the chest and knocked him unconscious into the dirt. "Now!" Amara shouted. 20 rifles opened fire simultaneously from concealed positions, not aimed to kill, but to disable and capture. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks. 3 riders fell from their horses immediately. The others wheeled around in confusion, suddenly realizing they were surrounded and outnumbered. "Drop your weapons," Marcus Johnson commanded from behind the water trough. 2 of the hired gunmen threw down their rifles. The rest spurred their horses toward the canyon, seeking escape through the back route. They rode directly into the second phase of Amara's trap. Samuel Washington had strung rope across the narrow canyon at horse height. The fleeing riders hit the barrier at full gallop. Horses stumbled. Men flew through the air. None were seriously injured, but all were effectively neutralized. Within 10 minutes, the entire assault force was either captured or unconscious. Not a single defender had been harmed. The precision of the operation stunned even Amara. "Your husband knew his business," Washington observed, tying up prisoners. Dr. Wells emerged from the root cellar to examine the fallen men. All would survive with proper medical attention. The defensive plan had been designed to capture evidence, not create martyrs. "These men aren't locals," she confirmed after checking their belongings. "Professional gunfighters from Kansas." Amara found employment papers in Buck's coat pocket. Payment vouchers signed by Theodore Blackwood. Detailed instructions for burning the house and eliminating all witnesses. "Written evidence," she announced, holding up the documents. "Signed orders for murder." The captured men were secured in the barn under guard. Marcus Johnson rode toward town to fetch federal marshals that Dr. Wells had secretly contacted days earlier. "They should be arriving on the morning train," Wells explained. "I sent word through territorial headquarters." At dawn, Marshal Robert Hayes arrived with 4 federal deputies. He examined the evidence methodically while questioning the captured gunmen. The hired men broke quickly under interrogation. Professional killers had no loyalty to employers who failed to protect them. They provided detailed testimony about Blackwood's operation. "Systematic land fraud," Marshal Hayes concluded. "Conspiracy to commit murder. We have enough evidence to arrest everyone involved." The federal marshals rode toward town with warrants for Hawkins, Blackwood, and 6 prominent businessmen. Territorial crimes fell under federal jurisdiction. Local corruption couldn't protect them anymore. In his jail cell, Jeb watched through the window as the marshals entered the sheriff's office. Shouting erupted. Furniture crashed. Within minutes, Hawkins was led out in shackles. "Jeb Crowder," Marshal Hayes announced, unlocking his cell. "You're free to go. All charges dropped." "What about my wife?" "She's fine, waiting for you at home." Jeb rode hard toward the valley, his heart pounding with relief and anticipation. The smoke he had seen was from torches, not burning buildings. Amara had survived the assault. He found her directing cleanup operations like a military commander. Captured weapons were being cataloged. Prisoner statements were being recorded. Evidence was being preserved for the territorial court. "You missed the excitement," she told him with a tired smile. Jeb embraced his wife carefully, mindful of her recent injuries. "I should have been here. You were exactly where you needed to be, safe in jail with an alibi." Dr. Wells showed him the evidence they had gathered: written orders for murder, financial records proving conspiracy, testimony from professional killers implicating the entire network. "The territorial court will shut down their operation permanently," she explained. By noon, word reached them that Blackwood had been arrested at the train station trying to flee with satchels full of money. His shell companies were being investigated. His assets were being frozen pending trial. 18 families will get their land back," Amara said, reading the marshal's preliminary report. The conspiracy had collapsed completely once exposed to federal investigation. Local corruption couldn't withstand territorial scrutiny supported by solid evidence. That evening, Amara and Jeb sat on their porch watching the sunset over their valley. The immediate danger was over, but challenges remained ahead. "The trial will take months," Jeb observed. "We'll be ready for whatever comes." "What if more enemies surface?" Amara opened her husband's journal to a section marked "Long-Term Security." Pages of plans for building alliances, establishing trade relationships, and creating mutual defense agreements. "We don't face them alone anymore," she said. Today proved that. 20 families had answered the call for help. Federal marshals had provided justice through legal channels. Dr. Wells had documented everything for historical record. Their individual struggle had become part of a larger movement toward justice and equality. The conspiracy's exposure would protect other families from similar attacks. "Tomorrow we start rebuilding," Amara announced. "Rebuilding what?" "Everything. Community. Trust. Hope for the future." Jeb looked across the fertile valley that was now legally and safely theirs. For the first time since losing his first family, he could envision a future worth fighting for. 6 months later, Amara stood in her garden with one hand resting on her growing belly. The morning sun illuminated rows of corn, beans, and squash planted according to her late husband's detailed agricultural plans. The valley had never looked more prosperous. Jeb emerged from the barn carrying fresh milk. His face had lost the haunted expression that once marked him as a broken drifter. Purpose and contentment had replaced years of guilt and wandering. "Dr. Wells is coming up the road," he announced. Their friend approached on horseback, her medical bag secured behind her saddle. She had been elected sheriff after Hawkins' conviction, bringing honest law enforcement to Millfield for the first time in years. "How are you feeling?" Wells asked Amara, dismounting near the porch. "Strong. The baby's active." Wells examined Amara with practiced efficiency. "Everything looks perfect. Another month and you'll be holding your child." The federal trials had concluded 3 weeks earlier. Blackwood received 20 years in territorial prison. Hawkins got 15 years for conspiracy and murder. 6 other businessmen faced various sentences for fraud and complicity. 18 families got their land back, Wells reported. The territorial government is returning all fraudulently acquired properties. Marcus Johnson had reclaimed his brother's farm. Sarah Creek's family received compensation for their losses. Samuel Washington was elected to the Territorial Council, giving formerly voiceless families political representation. "Change is spreading beyond our valley," Jeb observed. "Your stand made it possible," Wells replied. One act of courage inspired others to fight back. That afternoon, visitors began arriving for the weekly community gathering. The tradition had started spontaneously after the trials ended. Families came to share news, trade goods, and strengthen the bonds forged during their collective struggle. The Washingtons brought fresh vegetables from their restored farm. The Creek family contributed preserved meats and hand-sewn blankets. Children played together, while adults discussed crops, politics, and plans for the future. "We're building something new here," Marcus Johnson told the assembled group. "A community where everyone has a voice." Mixed families found acceptance impossible elsewhere. Black landowners faced ongoing challenges in other territories. But this valley had become a refuge where character mattered more than ancestry. Jeb treated injuries and illnesses for anyone who needed help. His medical skills served the entire community without regard to race or social status. The broken drifter had rediscovered his calling as a healer. "Dr. Jeb saved my son's life last week," Sarah Creek announced to the gathering. "Treated his fever when the town doctor refused to come." Amara coordinated trade relationships with neighboring settlements. Her intelligence and education commanded respect from merchants and territorial officials. The giant woman had become a regional leader. "The territorial capital wants to establish a trading post here," she reported, "official recognition of our community's importance." Children born in the valley would grow up in a world their parents had only dreamed of. Mixed heritage was normal. Education was valued. Opportunity existed regardless of background. As evening approached, the visitors prepared to return to their homes. But the sense of connection remained strong. Weekly gatherings had evolved into permanent bonds of mutual support. "Same time next week," Washington called out as families loaded their wagons. "Always," Amara replied from the porch. After the last wagon disappeared over the hill, Jeb and Amara sat together watching stars appear in the darkening sky. The valley stretched peacefully around them, secure and productive. "Do you ever miss the old life?" Amara asked. "The freedom of riding wherever you wanted?" "I was running from freedom, not toward it," Jeb replied. "Real freedom is choosing where to belong." Amara felt the baby kick strongly against her ribs. "Active tonight." "Good sign. Means the child will be a fighter. With parents like us, fighting might be necessary." But the struggles ahead would be different from those behind them. Political battles instead of physical ones. Economic challenges rather than survival threats. Building something positive rather than just defending against attack. The territorial government had implemented new laws protecting property rights regardless of race. Federal marshals maintained regular patrols to prevent future conspiracies. Educational opportunities were expanding for all children. "The world is changing," Jeb observed. "Maybe our child will grow up in a better one." "Definitely better. We're making sure of that." Their marriage had grown from desperate partnership into genuine love. Mutual respect had deepened into intimate understanding. Business arrangement had become true family. "I need to check the irrigation channels tomorrow," Amara said, shifting to accommodate the baby's position. "I'll handle it. You should rest more." "The work won't wait for childbirth. The work will get done. Community means sharing burdens." The next morning brought news from the territorial capital. Governor Mitchell had appointed Amara to the Territorial Development Commission. Her success managing agricultural resources had earned recognition at the highest levels. "First black woman appointed to territorial government," Wells announced, reading from the official letter. "About time," Jeb said proudly. The appointment carried significant responsibilities. Amara would help plan resource allocation for the entire territory. Her decisions would affect thousands of families seeking opportunity on the frontier. "I'll need to travel to the capital occasionally," she told Jeb. "We'll manage. The baby and I will hold down the farm." 3 weeks later, Amara went into labor during the early morning hours. Jeb's medical training proved invaluable as he assisted Dr. Wells with the delivery. Their daughter arrived healthy and strong just as sunrise painted the valley golden. "She's beautiful," Wells announced, placing the baby in Amara's arms. The child had her mother's strength and her father's gentle features. Dark eyes studied the world with alert intelligence. Tiny hands grasped with determined strength. "What will you call her?" Wells asked. Amara looked at Jeb, then at their daughter, then out the window at the prosperous valley they had fought to preserve. "Hope," she said simply. "Her name is Hope." The baby would inherit fertile land, loving parents, and a community built on justice rather than prejudice. She would grow up knowing that courage and determination could overcome any obstacle. As the sun climbed higher over their valley, 3 generations of dreams took shape in one small child. The past had been redeemed. The present was secure. The future stretched ahead with unlimited possibility. Hope slept peacefully in her mother's arms while her parents planned the world she would help create.